All right, welcome back. So we're on chapter 15, the autonomic nervous system. The nice thing about this chapter, it's really short. Yay! So I just really want you guys to understand the basics about the autonomic nervous system. That's really what we're gonna do. We're gonna touch on the basics, really the key things that you're gonna hear over and over again about it, and that's kind of where we're gonna leave it. Okay. So kind of as these images are jokingly referring to. When we talk about the autonomic nervous system, one of the key ones is we're going to talk about fight or flight, and then basically the system that's also in control of your everyday functions while you're at rest. So like right now, hopefully you're not all stressed out. One of your systems is in charge, and then we'll see there's another system that kind of kicks in when you have to either run away from something or you've got to fight it off. Except bears. Don't run toward bears. All right, so let's just take a look at this image. So here we have our central nervous system, right? And we've talked about this, right? That consisted of our brain and our spinal cord, right? And so we had our central nervous system, and then we also had our peripheral nervous system. So those were all the different nerves going to and from different organs. We had the afferent division. So afferent is basically incoming information. So this is sensory stimuli. And what's known as visceral stimuli would be any kind of information coming from your organs, okay, going up to the brain. Okay, and then you have what's known as the efferent, or the output part, and this is where we've talked about the somatic nervous systems, what we've already discussed. These are motor neurons that control our skeletal muscles. Now what we're going to talk about is the autonomic division. Okay, and this autonomic nervous system actually has two different sort of subgroups to it. So there's a sympathetic and then the parasympathetic. Basically what these are going to control are things like your smooth muscles, cardiac muscles, so your heart, glands, right? So smooth muscle like blood, like the muscles and blood vessels, digestive tract, all those, and cardiac muscle as well as some glands. And you'll talk more about the endocrine glands as well when you get into 202. All right. So the sensory neurons are what are known as interoreceptors. So basically these interoreceptors are going to tell you about information inside of you. So they're going to, for example, you have chemoreceptors and mechanoreceptors. So a chemoreceptor is going to be a sensory neuron that's telling you information about some sort of chemical cue. Okay. So, for example, you have just eaten food. It's going to tell you, send information like, oh, you've just eaten food. Or mechanoreceptor, same thing. You've just eaten food, your stomach stretches. That's going to send information to the brain like, oh, we're full, kind of thing. Okay, so all of those are interoreceptors, for example. Again, information about our internal environment. It can be different things like blood pressure as well. Okay. Yeah, blood pressure is a good one. So another thing that I'll tell you is like whether or not your blood pressure is increasing, decreasing, whether or not the pH of your blood is too high or too low. So if you're not getting enough oxygen, so that's going to send information to the system like, hey, increase your breathing rate, for example. Motor neurons will regulate visceral activities. So you'll have different motor neurons, even though they're not necessarily ones that are going to skeletal muscles. These are going to smooth muscles. However, they're going to help regulate, right, how fast your digestive tract is moving food along. Right? And then we know that different times during different situations, our digestive tract will move faster or slower. So and even the direction that it moves food in can change, right? So we had mentioned a little bit, we had mentioned vomiting in the last lecture, but I mean, think about this as well. So you get this information about something that you've eaten. Again, it's not very good. It's going to regulate the activity of your stomach, as well as your intestines to either get it up one way or out the other way. Sometimes like when you have the flu, it's both, right? To get whatever it is out of you, right, is what it's trying to do. So it'll help regulate those kinds of activities. Versus if you've just eaten something totally fine, you're not sick, right, it can go along at a different speed. Okay. And again, so this autonomic nervous system has two subdivisions. It has this parasympathetic as well as sympathetic. And we'll talk, again, different scenarios about like how and when one kicks on versus another. So basically all of your organs will have something called dual innervation, meaning that if you're going to have information coming from the parasympathetic nervous system, you're going to have axons coming from the sympathetic nervous system as well. Okay, so both subdivisions, both the parasympathetic and the sympathetic nervous system, will function in controlling the organs. Okay, and that, so it's I don't know. I guess it's sort of not exactly the same as, or the same idea along with like brakes and gas of a car, right? If you're going to speed something up, you also want to be able to slow it down. Okay. All right. So let's see. So we'll talk about the sympathetic nervous system first. So this is our fight or flight response. So this is going to kick in when there's some sort of danger. So zombies, for example, right? You're there minding your own business, and all of a sudden zombies are going to come in. Your sympathetic nervous system is going to take over. Okay, so let's just kind of take a look at some of the things that it causes. Okay, so one, pupils of your eyes dilate. So the pupils are the black part of your eye, the little thing in the middle, right? The hole in the middle of your eye. So that causes it to dilate, meaning it gets wider, right? And when it gets wider like that, it allows more light into your eye, so you're able to see things, I guess, better, if you will. So, when you're running away or trying to fight something off, you want to make sure you're seeing something very clearly, right? Sweating is promoted because, again, it's preparing you pretty much automatically, like, oh my God, you're gonna exert some sort of physical activity to either get away from something or fight it off, right? So all of a sudden your body's just like, we're gonna sweat preemptively, so we know we're gonna have some sort of physical exertion. We want to make sure we don't overheat and pass out. Your heart rate increases. Again, physical activity, more blood's got to get to different parts of your body to deliver oxygen and nutrients, so your heart rate's going to increase. Your bronchioles dilate, so your air passageways dilate, right? So I don't know if you've ever been really stressed out. Like you can even have a fairly, decent head cold. Something happens, man, your sinuses just clear up in preparation for you to, again, to fight something off or, to get away from it. It's going to be important that you get enough oxygen, again, going to your lungs so they can get to your muscles to get you to safety. At that point, your so this motility for digestion is inhibited. So at that time, like if you're going to fight something off or run away from it, basically what the body is going to do is it's going to take all the blood that's going to your intestines and to your stomach, or I'm saying all, but most of it, and it's going to divert that to muscles. So basically digestion stops for that period of time. Because basically at that point, you're like, look, I don't need blood going to my intestines. I need to go into my muscles. So again, I've got plenty of oxygen and nutrients, making sure that I fight off these zombies, or if I can't, I run away from them, right? When it's safe again, things can go back on and I can go back to digesting my, I don't know, Twinkie, whatever it is I just ate. Okay. And then your body's also going to start converting any kind of reserves. So you can see in the liver, for example, it'll start converting stores back into glucose, again, getting energy to muscles. And I should rephrase this last one. It's not so much that urination itself is inhibited. It's, I should say, new urine production. So new urine production is inhibited, right? A lot of times when that sympathetic nervous system kicks in, the very first response people have is they let go of the urine that they already have. So the bladder releases all the urine because, again, if you're going to fight something off, that full bag of urine is just kind of dead weight. So if you let that go, I know it's not pretty, but it lightens the load so you can kind of get away. So at the onset, you will like release that. However, your body will inhibit or stop any new urine production because, again, by producing urine, you're losing water. If you're losing water, you have the potential to lose blood volume. Plus, you need that water for sweat so you can keep cool. So again, you don't overheat. So you don't want to lose that water in urine. Okay, so your body will stop any new urine production. The other sort of thought behind that, and this is certainly true for certain animals, is that really, like, I don't know, not everything, but a lot of different animals will stop their attack if their prey has kind of like defecated and messed on themselves. They're like, that looked edible, but woof, the smell coming off that. So it may also sort of have that hampering effect. I mean, really, when you think about it, when someone pees themselves, you're sort of like, yeah, the fight's over. I won. Right? So it may even have that kind of a, I don't know, sort of psychological effect to maybe prevent any further damage, I guess. All right. Now, in parasympathetic, that's going to be exactly the opposite. So in parasympathetic nervous system, this is the system that's going to be dominant while you're at rest. So like right now, you're hopefully at rest. Nothing is trying to eat your brains or anything. So your parasympathetic nervous system is what is active. So right now, if you've eaten something, your digestive tract, there's plenty of blood going to your digestive tract, you're digesting your food. Your heart rate, basically, it decreases it to your resting levels, right? So basically, hopefully your heart's not just pounding in your chest. Your bronchioles, those air passageways, are not maximally dilated. So basically, their size will decrease to, again, whatever the baseline levels are going to be. And then other maintenance activities are being performed. So things like defecation, pooping, right? So you're basically, again, motility in your digestive tract is working just fine. So, you should be able to go poop. I mean, when you really think about it, you have to be somewhat relaxed to poop. You know what it's like when you go over to someone's house and you're just like kind of nervous. You can't go poop in someone's house or in a public place. It doesn't work that way. If you're nervous, you're not going to poop. So again, this parasympathetic nervous system has to be active for that to occur. The second term here, micturition, this is just the fancy word for urinating. That's what micturition is. So similarly, for new urine production to occur, the parasympathetic nervous system has to be the one that is active. Okay. So let me just kind of hide me here, or just move me over. So in this image, we're seeing here is a sympathetic nervous system. So you'll have seen this in lab. You have the sympathetic chain ganglia. So they're the clusters, or I should say like the chain of neuron cell bodies outside of the spinal cord. They belong to the sympathetic nervous system. So basically the neurons are coming off the spinal cord. They're making contacts in that sympathetic chain ganglion, and then they're continuing on to whatever organ it is that they're going to continue on to. Okay. The parasympathetic, let's see if I can get this to advance. I don't know why I'm having trouble here. Yeah. So, okay, so you can see here, I'm going to hide me. So yeah, nerve fibers are going to originate in the thoracic and lumbar levels. And then basically the preganglionic fibers, so these fibers right in here are short, and then these postganglionic fibers are long, because they have to go from where that sympathetic chain ganglion was, which was near the spinal cord, and it's got to go all the way to the heart, or all the way to the lungs, or all the way to the liver. Okay, so that's all that sentence means. Okay, and you'll notice that they're going to originate in that T1 to L3 area. Now, in the parasympathetic nervous system, you'll see it's sort of the opposite setup. So the nerves are going to originate in the cranial areas as well as down here in the sacral areas. So these preganglionic fibers tend to be really long. Okay, and a lot of times they don't even have a ganglion, so there's only a few little ganglia here. These neurons are actually very long. So here you see cranial nerve number 10, cranial nerve 9, 7, 3, for example. These are all parasympathetic nerves. You'll have seen these in lab. Okay. And then that terminal ganglia is near the organ. So there's not very long for it to go from the ganglion to the eye, is all that's saying. Again, you don't worry about this. It's not like I'm going to have you label an image or anything like that for a lecture. Just understand sort of the basic setup. Like, right, so parasympathetic is going to be up in the cranial and sacral areas. The sympathetic was down here in the thoracic to lumbar areas. In this case, in the parasympathetic, these preganglionic fibers are long, postganglionic fibers are short, and it's just the opposite in the sympathetic nervous system. We also have what are known as an autonomic plexus. So in this case, you kind of see all this yellow? It kind of forms almost like a net, like a fishing net. That's a plexus. So it's basically where different neurons, not neurons, different nerves are going to come together, and they form this sort of web-like connections to one another. So different areas are actually innervated by different nerves. So when you tell someone that you've hit them in the solar plexus, basically what you're doing is you're actually hitting them in this celiac ganglionic plexus right here, right in the top part of their stomach. And you can't, when you knock the wind out of somebody, you can see it's near this diaphragm, and also hitting this plexus, if you hit it hard enough, you can actually stun all those nerves, and that's kind of one of the things that causes someone to kind of crumple over on you. But basically, I just want you to understand here, again, there's really not that much. I just want you to understand that they do form this mesh-like web, and you will have innervations coming from multiple levels. It's not just from one level. And the last slide here, so these top two examples are from the sympathetic nervous system. This bottom one is from the parasympathetic nervous system. So you see here, sympathetic neuron is coming from the spinal cord. It's releasing acetylcholine. Same thing here, it's coming from the spinal cord, releasing acetylcholine. And basically the same thing here in the parasympathetic, it's releasing acetylcholine. So basically parasympathetic and sympathetic fibers release acetylcholine. Okay, and then what you're seeing here in the sympathetic, afterwards, either it's making a connection with a postganglionic neuron, and then that's going to release norepinephrine, or it's contacting the adrenal gland, and that releases norepinephrine. So sympathetic nervous system will function using norepinephrine. Okay, and let's see, spelling of that is simply norepinephrine. Okay, and so basically all of the effects of that sympathetic nervous system will be due to this norepinephrine as well as epinephrine. You have heard of these terms. You probably know them by their other name. So epinephrine is also known as adrenaline. Okay, and norepinephrine is known as noradrenaline. So yeah, sympathetic nervous system is going to function by releasing acetylcholine at the ganglion or at the adrenal gland, and then it's going to be that postganglionic neuron or the adrenal gland itself that will release either the norepinephrine or epinephrine, and then it's going to be those two that are going to have those responses of dilating pupils, increasing breathing rate, increasing heart rate, whatever it was. Okay. In parasympathetic, basically, again, similarly, these preganglionic fibers will release acetylcholine. However, the postganglionic neurons will also release acetylcholine. Okay. And that acetylcholine, in this case, will act to bring things back to lower heart rate, to lower the bronchioles, to basically constrict the pupils back to baseline levels. So hopefully that distinction makes sense to you. And that's it for autonomic nervous system. Really, again, there's very little that I want you to, it does get a little bit more complicated. However, the key things I want you to understand is basically the functions. So we talked about the fight or flight response and the rest and digest. So please make sure you really understand, like, if I give you a scenario, which one is it? Which one's active? Is it sympathetic nervous system or parasympathetic nervous system? Make sure you understand like what all those different things are. And just understand the basic differences between them. So which one has the longer preganglionic neurons, which one has the longer preganglionic neurons. Which one releases acetylcholine where, which one uses norepinephrine, that kind of thing. Okay. It does get a little bit more complicated, but for a purpose of A&P, you don't really need to know to get to like all the nitty-gritty details. Okay, and you'll talk more about adrenaline, noradrenaline, or epinephrine and norepinephrine when you get to 202 and you start talking about the endocrine system. Okay? So if you have any questions, again, as always, feel free to email me. This quiz should be a shorter quiz, should be pretty easy. Okay? See you later.